作揖，来吧，备下龙。在平安中，阿泰来，戴上王冠，巴拉，他的新郎，波伊卡拉，来吧，新娘。这是一首优美的希伯来婚礼歌曲，仿佛天上的天使在呼唤等待了6000年的新娘，勇敢地站出来，为将要来临的天上君王戴上荣耀的冠冕。
Simple science. The great doomsday cataclysm, awaiting only the dragon deluge, possessing potential energy hundreds of times greater than the Indonesian tsunami. October 15th, 2024. This post was written by Junjun Shincheng on 6park.com on October 15th, 2024. Traces of it remain discoverable via Google search. We will be gradually restoring the key content from the Junjun Shincheng channel that was lost from 6park.com. The version presented here should be very close to the final published text, with not a single word altered. Thank you all for reading. In this post, let us calculate just how terrifying the doomsday water-rising cataclysm truly is, and why it is poised to erupt at any moment, awaiting only a single instance of Long Pei, dragon deluge, or Long Lin, dragon downpour. Pei refers to torrential rain, while Lin refers to rain that falls ceaselessly and continuously, much like a dragon in motion. In meteorological terms, this phenomenon is known as an atmospheric river storm. This also constitutes one layer of meaning behind the aphorism. Once the dragon rises, the 38th parallel ceases to exist. On one level, once these atmospheric river storms commence, the dams currently holding back the river waters will no longer be able to contain them. On another level, specifically between October 12th and October 30th, when the ancient dragon of Satan, symbolized by a comet, rises into the sky, the 38th parallel, the demarcation line between North and South Korea, will likewise cease to exist. This serves as a clear warning to us. The great cataclysm is about to begin. Furthermore, the third line of the Joachim Urach, the prophecies of Joachim, explicitly pinpoints the precise moment of this great cataclysm, marking the very inception of this water-rising disaster. The concept of water rising and fire descending, shui sheng huajiang describes the end times cataclysm foretold in the esoteric text Joachim Urach. It is also the very same great cataclysm against which various prophetic texts, including the Holy Bible, have warned us. The water-rising phenomenon corresponds directly to the imagery in the book of Revelation, wherein water pours forth from the dragon's mouth. The serpent spewed water out of his mouth behind the woman like a river, to sweep her away with the flood. Revelation 12 verse 15, Chinese Union Version. This imagery of water pouring from the dragon's mouth signifies two things simultaneously. First, the Long Pei, a torrential, dragon-like downpour of rain, and second, a massive surge of floodwaters bursting forth from the mouth of the Yangtze River. Ultimately, this event will trigger a global tsunami, which in turn will precipitate earthquakes across multiple regions of the world, followed by subsequent plagues and famines, catastrophes that will ultimately claim the lives of 1/4 of the human population. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over 1/4 of the earth to kill by sword, famine, plague, or death, and by the wild beasts of the earth. Revelation 6 verse 8. The descent of fire corresponds to the account in the book of Enoch, wherein 7 meteorites crashed down upon the earth. It also corresponds to Daniel's vision. A stone flying from the heavens strikes the feet of clay of a colossal statue. Ultimately, the statue topples over and shatters into dust. This is the event, slated for the year 2031, that will deliver the final, decisive blow bringing human history to a close. Hence, it is termed the descent of fire, fire raining down from the heavens. As Jesus foretold regarding the end times, likening them to the days of Noah and Lot. Just as it was in the days of Noah, so also will it be in the days of the Son of Man. It was also like the days of Lot. Luke 17 verses 26 and 28. The era of Noah was characterized by a deluge, that is, the rising of water. The era of Lot was characterized by the descent of fire. One event marks the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, while the other marks its conclusion. Of course, let no one be disheartened, for there exists a select group, those safely within the ark, who will ultimately enter into the peaceful millennial reign of Jesus and return to the Garden of Eden. In this post, let us examine just how terrifying the rising water catastrophe, occurring at the very dawn of the end times, is truly destined to be. First, consider the rising of the water itself. Once a dam's sluice gates are closed to regulate flow, water begins to accumulate within the reservoir. As the water level rises, it acquires potential energy. When a dam inevitably breaches, this stored potential energy is unleashed. As the torrent rushes downstream, laden with silt and debris, it becomes an unstoppable force. However, once this potential energy is fully expended, the surge becomes like a spent arrow, its momentum exhausted, and it ceases to pose a threat. Thus, it is this very potential energy that we must calculate and assess. Here, a crucial point must be clarified regarding China's vast dam system. It consists of an intricate network of rivers interconnected with lakes, augmented by a staggering 100,000 dams, 40% of which are currently classified as hazardous or structurally unsound. When torrential, dragon-like rains descend, manifesting as atmospheric river storms, is it not a highly probable outcome that a significant number of these dams will succumb and collapse? Let us first examine just how formidable these dragon rains, also known as atmospheric river storms, truly are. Over the past 2 years, California has been struck by several such events. Each time, for a period of 2 weeks, torrential rains poured down incessantly. Ultimately, these storms not only brought an end to a drought that had persisted for over a decade, replenishing depleted reservoirs in the process, but also led to the formation of a massive lake in central California, Tulare Lake. This body of water is also referred to as the Ghost Lake, for it suddenly reappeared after having vanished for 80 years. This lake stretches 81 miles, 130 kilometers, in length and covers an area of 687 square miles, 1,759 square kilometers, holding a total volume of 8 billion cubic meters of water. Thus, it is the norm for a single dragon rain event to deliver several billion cubic meters of water. In other words, these atmospheric river storms did more than merely refill the dried-up rivers, lakes, and reservoirs that had lain parched in California for decades. They actually generated a surplus of 8 billion cubic meters of water. To be more specific, Florida also experienced several weeks of atmospheric river storms this year. During the most intense downpour, which lasted only a few hours one afternoon, 2 feet of rain fell. To put that into perspective, 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters, so 2 feet amounts to 666 millimeters. Florida spans 130 kilometers in width and 640 kilometers in length. Typically, the rain band associated with such storms covers a width equivalent to 1/4 to 1/3 of the state's length, meaning over 100 kilometers. Even if we conservatively estimate the zone of heavy downpour at just 30 kilometers, the resulting water volume is staggering. 130 kilometers times 30 kilometers times 2/3 m equals 2.6 billion cubic meters. Fortunately, Florida is bordered by the sea on 3 sides, so all that water eventually drains away into the ocean. Of course, such torrential downpours do not occur with this intensity every single day, nor are they confined to a single location. Rather, the rainfall is distributed across various areas, dropping several hundred millimeters here today, and several hundred millimeters there tomorrow. During those weeks, localized flooding on a daily basis became the norm. However, The situation in the middle and upper reaches of China's Yangtze River is quite different. Because the terrain consists of high mountains and deep gorges, the water ultimately converges and rushes down through the canyons, surging toward the various major dams situated along the river. Consider, too, the mountainous regions of Central Europe. Just a few weeks ago, a single atmospheric river storm struck the area, causing a dam to collapse. The aftermath was truly a scene of utter devastation. If a similar volume of rainfall were to descend upon the series of dams situated along the Jinsha and Yalong rivers, even if a mere 2 to 3 billion cubic meters of water were to come surging down, which of those dams wouldn't be completely overtopped? The dams themselves stand hundreds of meters high, with one dam giving way after another in succession, and with the upstream reservoirs collectively holding a capacity equivalent to 3 or 4 Three Gorges reservoirs, culminating ultimately at the Three Gorges Dam itself. The entire mass of water would be swept straight out into the ocean in no time. The upper and middle reaches of the Yangtze River are characterized by towering mountains and deep gorges. Consequently, when widespread, sustained torrential rains occur, the entirety of that water inevitably flows into the reservoirs. Unlike in flatland regions, where flooding might inundate one area for a few weeks, then another area elsewhere, allowing for a natural buffering effect between them. Here, there is no such natural buffer. Moreover, given the steep terrain and the rapid, turbulent flow of the water, the sheer downward force of the current is immense. Furthermore, following the rise in water levels, the surrounding vegetation has not yet had sufficient time to re-establish itself. It takes over a decade for trees to grow into a forest canopy. As a result, the scale of potential debris flows and landslides is absolutely massive. This factor serves to further amplify the destructive downward impact force. To claim that the 100-meter-high dams constructed in this region could possibly withstand such an impact force is, without question, nothing more than the nonsensical drivel of so-called experts. This is precisely why, once the inevitable catastrophe has run its course, this entire cohort of experts, including Xi Jinping himself, will be tried and sentenced to death by the global community for crimes against humanity. Thus, regarding the impending disaster of rising floodwaters, all the necessary preconditions are now in place. The only missing element is the arrival of the dragon's deluge, the torrential downpours, across the upper and middle reaches of the Yangtze River basin. Throughout this period, Enoch has been closely monitoring the cloud and rainfall patterns in that specific region. You can all verify this yourselves. Simply access the U.S. meteorological satellite imagery, then focus your view on the area surrounding Sichuan province, and you will clearly see the current cloud and rainfall formations over that region. The moment those torrential rains arrive, the dragon's deluge, the great catastrophe will commence. Let us now perform a rough calculation of the gravitational potential energy stored within the Three Gorges Reservoir, energy which also represents its hydroelectric power generating potential. The more China boasts about the sheer volume of electricity generated by this facility, the more it inadvertently reveals to us the magnitude of the destructive potential energy that would be unleashed were the system to spiral out of control. The Three Gorges Reservoir holds a water volume of 39.3 billion cubic meters, situated at an elevation of 200 meters above sea level. Therefore, even if we assume that only 30 billion cubic meters of that water were to come crashing down toward the ocean, just how much potential energy would be released? The calculation yields 3 times 10 superscript 1 cubic meters times 10 superscript 3 kilograms / cubic meter times 200 meters times 9.6 joules equals 5.76 times 10 superscript 1 joules. Years ago, these very calculations and concerns were raised by those who opposed the construction of the Three Gorges Dam. Yet, in the end, it was built regardless. Over the past 2 decades, entirely unbeknownst to the public, Hundreds of large dams have actually been constructed along the upper reaches of the Yangtze River. Their combined water storage capacity is several, or even a dozen, times that of the Three Gorges Dam. Moreover, they sit at an elevation 10 times higher. With the water rising to such heights, does that not strike fear into your heart? Even more alarming is what lies further upstream. Over 1,000 additional dams are slated for construction within the next 10 to 20 years. These structures will possess a storage capacity dozens, even hundreds, of times greater than that of the Three Gorges Reservoir, and they will be situated at even loftier elevations, causing the water levels to rise to unprecedented heights. Why is this being done? The answer is actually quite simple. As Old Huang warned everyone long ago, the current in the upper Yangtze is so swift and turbulent that it carries downstream not merely silt and sand, but heavy river pebbles and cobbles. Consequently, it is impossible to flush these pebbles out of the reservoir and downriver. Eventually, the Three Gorges Reservoir will inevitably be filled to the brim with them. This was Old Huang's final prophecy. Why has it not yet come to pass? How have the authorities managed to avert it? The solution is simple: by constructing dams upstream to intercept and block the rolling pebbles. This reveals a crucial truth. Once the Three Gorges Dam project was set in motion, much like an arrow released from a bow, there was no turning back. To preserve the existing dams, one is compelled to build an endless succession of new dams further and further upstream. Otherwise, starting from the uppermost reservoir, once the pebbles fill that basin, they will begin to fill the next one down, and then the one after that. Very quickly, every reservoir in the chain would be completely choked with sediment. You see, Old Huang's final unfulfilled prophecy, the one that, by all accounts, should have manifested and come true by now, was circumvented in the most bizarre fashion imaginable. In a frantic rush, they hastily erected nearly 100 additional dams upstream, using the pretext of hydroelectric power generation to mask the grim reality of the reservoirs filling up with sediment. The upper reaches of the Yangtze consist of desolate, rugged terrain, a harsh wilderness where not even a bird would lay an egg. Where is the actual need for such a massive amount of electricity in such a sparsely populated region? Furthermore, to transmit that power, vast electrical grids would have to traverse this treacherous landscape. How could such infrastructure possibly be constructed and maintained? Thus, the claim of power generation is nothing more than a flimsy excuse, a smokescreen, and a complete sham. Yet, do you truly believe that these 100-odd reservoirs and dams will be sufficient to halt the downstream march of the pebbles? You are mistaken. The pebbles continue to roll downward. Consequently, atop these 100 dams, you will be forced to construct another 1,000, further upstream, another 10,000, and further still, over 100,000 more. And they must be built with extreme haste. Otherwise, the reservoirs will begin to fill up. This frenzied construction will continue, dam after dam, until the very highest reaches of the river are reached, where the current finally subsides and ceases to be turbulent. Thus, the Yangtze River is formed by the confluence of tens of thousands of streams. You would have to construct numerous dams on every single one of these streams to finally prevent the pebbles from rolling downstream. Years ago, Elder Huang nearly drowned while standing in waist-deep stream water. The pebbles beneath his feet were sliding away, making it impossible for him to maintain his footing. He could not even manage to stand upright. It was then that Elder Huang truly grasped the treacherous nature of the Yangtze, a peril far beyond the scope of our imagination. This also teaches us a crucial lesson. The construction of dams must continue until the water level is reduced to mere waist depth, a point at which that immense potential energy is finally neutralized. Since the construction of so many dams, the volume of stones and sediment carried downstream by the Yangtze has diminished significantly. In reality, this material is simply being intercepted by the dams, effectively filling up the reservoirs behind them. Consequently, the river's estuary, and the regions surrounding Shanghai have begun to suffer from reverse erosion caused by the encroaching seawater. In these areas, which historically would have seen the formation of new riverbank land over the course of several decades, the process is now reversed. The river is actively eroding and devouring that very land. Consequently, within a few short decades, Shanghai could effectively end up floating in the sea. One can only imagine the sheer volume of earth and rock required to counteract this erosion, material that is currently being swallowed up by every single reservoir upstream, which is precisely why there is such a frenzied drive to build ever more dams further upriver. Let us continue our analysis. The middle and upper reaches of the river hold a water volume equivalent to anywhere between a few to a dozen Three Gorges reservoirs. Furthermore, the elevation rises to over 1,000 meters. Even based on the most conservative estimates, assuming a capacity equivalent to just 10 Three Gorges reservoirs and an elevation ranging from a conservative 1,000 to 3,000 meters, the total energy involved is amplified 100-fold, reaching a staggering 5.76 times 10 superscript 1 joules. This is equivalent to the energy output of 22 of the world's largest hydrogen bombs, each possessing a yield of 50 million tons of TNT. It is worth noting that a single such hydrogen bomb releases its energy within a mere 39 nanoseconds, a power output equivalent to 1.4% of the sun's total power. Therefore, the potential energy contained within this body of water is equivalent to 7.8% of the energy the sun releases over a 39 nanosecond interval. The only difference being that this massive volume of water would take several days to fully discharge its energy. Furthermore, an article published in National Geographic magazine regarding the physics of tsunamis noted that the energy released during the Indonesian tsunami was approximately 10 superscript 1 joules. In the event of a dam collapse of this magnitude, the energy unleashed would be equivalent to at least 5.6 times the energy of that Indonesian tsunami. The calculations presented here account for merely a few dozen major dams in the upper reaches of the Yangtze River, specifically on its two tributaries, the Jinsha and Yalong rivers, and the potential consequences of a catastrophic failure at the Three Gorges Dam. This figure does not even begin to factor in the repercussions should 40% of China's 100,000 dams, many of which are currently classified as hazardous, fail simultaneously within a span of just a few days. Even if one were to multiply this estimate 100-fold, it would still be an extremely conservative figure. As of 2011, there were 9,802 dams nationwide, holding a total water volume of 932.312 billion cubic meters, a volume equivalent to 23 times that of the Three Gorges Reservoir. Furthermore, over the subsequent 14 years, that is, since 2011, the Jinsha and Yalong rivers alone have seen the construction of dozens of large-scale reservoirs, collectively impounding a water volume equivalent to another 3.6 Three Gorges reservoirs. And this accounts for only a few dozen dams, roughly 1/10 of the hundreds of new dams constructed during this period. Indeed, the past decade or so has marked an era of explosive growth in dam construction across the middle and upper reaches of the Yangtze. Even in cases where power generation has yet to commence, the process of water impoundment is already underway. Thus, it is virtually certain that the actual volume of impounded water is several times higher than current estimates suggest. More alarmingly, many of these structures are colossal dams towering hundreds of meters in height. When we further incorporate the factor of sediment-laden water, specifically the descent of massive debris flows, the potential energy involved escalates by several orders of magnitude. Since rock and sediment are far denser and heavier than water, the destructive force unleashed as they plunge from great heights, the very power of a debris flow, is naturally many times, or even dozens of times, greater than that of water's gravitational potential energy calculated in isolation. Once these additional factors are taken into account, resulting in a potential energy estimate 10 or even 100 times higher than initial figures. It becomes clear that we have grossly underestimated the sheer magnitude of this great leap forward in water impoundment. A potential energy equivalent to 56, or perhaps even 560, tsunamis on the scale of the 2004 Indonesian disaster is already amassed there, lying in wait. Even if we adopt the conservative median figure, say, the potential energy of 300 Indonesian-scale tsunamis, this amounts to a staggering 3 times 10 superscript 2 joules, poised to be unleashed in its entirety the moment a domino effect of structural failures begins. A glance at the Jinsha and Yalong rivers reveals a landscape dotted with massive dams, each hundreds of meters high, spaced out every 10 to 40 kilometers. Should a single one of these dams fail, it would inevitably trigger a catastrophic chain reaction across the entire system. Of course, this immense potential energy would be dissipated across a vast geographical area and over a span of several days. In that sense, the outcome is certainly preferable to an instantaneous release occurring within nanoseconds. Nevertheless, the resulting catastrophe would remain one of truly monumental proportions. Can you truly grasp the nature of the rising water energy, the upward surge of water, inherent in the cosmic dynamic of water rising and fire descending? How can human calculation ever hope to surpass the designs of heaven? Humans may anticipate earthquakes and wars, yet they fail to foresee phenomena like the dragon deluge and dragon downpour, rainfall of such magnitude that it defies all norms. This is no mere once-in-a-century event. Indeed, calling it a once-in-a-millennium occurrence would hardly be an exaggeration. Yet now, it arrives every single year, sometimes several times within a single year. Moreover, with such a massive concentration of reservoirs situated in the upper and middle reaches of the river systems, the frequency and intensity of both earthquakes and rainfall surges have skyrocketed. Consequently, even if disaster does not strike this year, 5 or 10 years from now, as the rising water continues to climb ever higher, is it not inevitable that a catastrophe of this magnitude will ultimately occur? In truth, this disaster was long overdue. It is only because the hand of God has been protecting us, working in ways invisible to our eyes, that it has been held at bay until now. Yet, do the Chinese people offer thanks to God? On the contrary, they are challenging him. And so, God has ordained that this event shall unfold during the year of the dragon and the serpent. Therein lies the profound mystery. As time progresses, the magnitude of the disaster will only intensify, for the rising water will have ascended to even greater heights. How extensive will the devastation be this time? The asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs released approximately 4.2 times 10 superscript 2 superscript 3 joules of energy, triggering tsunamis that reached heights of 1,000 to 2,000 meters. Please note this distinction carefully. These heights are measured in meters, not feet. For reference, the storm surges associated with hurricanes typically range from 10 to 30 feet. Let us assume that half of this rising water energy flows into the ocean, thereby triggering a tsunami. This would amount to an energy release of 1.5 times 10 superscript 2 joules. The 2004 Indonesian tsunami, which generated waves reaching 30 meters in height, involved an energy release of 10 superscript 1 joules. The dinosaur extinction event, by contrast, released 4.2 times 10 superscript 2 superscript 3 joules and generated waves reaching 1,500 meters. The energy involved in the current scenario is 150 times greater than that of the Indonesian tsunami, yet it amounts to only 1,000th of the energy released during the dinosaur extinction event. Therefore, estimating that the resulting tsunami waves will be 5 to 10 times higher than those of the Indonesian tsunami would likely constitute a very conservative projection. Consequently, a wave height of 150 meters at the river mouths along China's coast, and approximately 50 meters as it propagates across the globe, should be regarded as a highly conservative figure. This corresponds to the height of a 15 to 20-story building, though the actual impact will, of course, also depend on prevailing wind directions and tidal conditions. During the dinosaur extinction event, 95% of all biological species were wiped out, including the dinosaurs themselves. This time, while the mortality rate may not reach that staggering 95% threshold, the prophecy recorded in the Bible, stating that 1/4 of the human population shall be wiped out, would appear to be a reasonable and plausible expectation. When massive tsunamis surge toward regions prone to seismic faulting and frequent earthquakes, such as Japan and California, the entire world will, within those few days, experience a series of massive tremors. This is precisely what Jesus foretold, that there will be earthquakes in various places. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Matthew 24 verses 7 to 8. The first statement made by Jesus referred to the First and Second World Wars, while the second statement points to the inception of the Great Tribulation. Separating these two events lies a span of 77 years of relative peace, from 1947 to 2024. Therefore, this marks the imminent calamity of rising waters that is about to unfold. As described in the prophetic records, the heavens collapse and the earth rends. White sands stand tall. Nameless, swift calamities descend from the skies. Waters rise and fires fall, unbeknownst to the masses. Corpses pile up like mountains, victims of deadly plagues. They are cast into the ditches, the ravine of unreason. White sands stand as water. This signifies a tsunami. The death toll is immense, with corpses piling up like mountains. Eventually, plagues break out, and the bodies are simply dumped into ditches to be done with. Practices that, in ordinary years, would be considered utterly senseless. Why do plagues occur? The accumulation of corpses contaminates all water sources and fills the world with the stench of death. Naturally, this becomes a breeding ground for disease. However, modern medical capabilities should theoretically be sufficient to contain these types of epidemics. Yet, considering the multitude of P3 and P4 laboratories worldwide, such as the P4 lab in Wuhan, if these facilities were to be swept away by massive floods, the viruses contained within would inevitably be unleashed upon the entire globe. As for famine, numerous grain silos are washed away, and floodwaters block transportation routes. Together, these factors will trigger widespread, localized famines. The Nanjiao prophetic records also contains descriptions of high-rise buildings, referred to as thatched huts amidst the clouds, and their subsequent reconstruction. These details align perfectly with the lyrics found in the songs of the artist Dao Lang. A tsunami manifests as a towering wall of water, much like when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea in ancient times, and the pursuing Egyptian army was annihilated when the water walls collapsed upon them. This time, the walls of water rise once again, signaling the commencement of the final 7 years of the Great Tribulation. So, are you ready? There is very little time left for any of you. In recent days, due to the impact of 2 hurricanes, a significant number of ballots have been lost at various polling stations. Consequently, from the perspective of the ancient dragon, Satan, triggering this massive catastrophe just prior to the election serves as the perfect means to completely sabotage the U.S. electoral process and inflict the ultimate shock upon the nation. Thus, the arrival of this calamity immediately before the election represents Satan's prime opportunity. What Satan truly seeks is to ensure that, come 2028, millions of Israelis are denied entry into the wilderness of America, the sanctuary prepared for them by God. That is the true focal point of this election. This is precisely the message conveyed to us in the 3rd verse of the Nanjiao. I urge everyone to revisit my previous posts, where I assigned specific homework for you to complete. Once you grasp this fundamental point, You will know exactly how to save yourselves and your entire family. Finally, I offer one last reminder to the Chinese-speaking community. The doors of the Ark of Salvation open first for the Chinese people, but they will also be the first to close. The Nanjiao states in no uncertain terms that by the end of the year of the snake, the Ark's doors will be sealed shut against those of Chinese descent. Thereafter, not a single person of Chinese heritage will be able to enter. When God cast those outside the Ark, our own kin, to Satan, it became clear to everyone that, from that moment on, people of Chinese descent would face the most wretched fate imaginable. Moreover, given that the catastrophe of the rising waters originated in China, their suffering would be the most severe of all disasters. A calamity within a calamity. I truly do not know how to adequately describe it. One must simply understand this. To those inside the Ark, anyone on the outside, be they parents, children, or spouses, are nothing more than strangers. If you wish to leave, no one will stop you. Yet once you step outside, the door will slam shut. You will never be able to return. Those left on the outside will be forced to endure the scorn and discrimination of every other race. To put it bluntly, being confined in a concentration camp would be considered a mild outcome by comparison. What makes it even more tragic is that many among them are those who mistook their enemy for a father. Only at that moment will they finally realize the full extent of their own folly, but by then, it will be far too late. The calculation regarding the potential energy of the Indonesian tsunami can be found in this academic paper.
In the beginning was the Word, the Hebrew breath, the 5 books of Moses defying death. Torah, the name the Father gave to light the path for Adam's race, the lost to save. The very scriptures Jesus spoke of then, the witness of the King, the great Amen. Tavaresh, High Torah, 4 letters in a row, the code of the Torah, the seeds we sow. It's the key to heaven, the staff in Jacob's hand, the Father's hidden mystery written in the book. Torah, Torah, the rhythm of the soul, the map that brings the broken heart back home and whole. In Genesis and Exodus, the secret starts to spin. Skip 50 letters, find the Torah hidden deep within. But in Leviticus, the heart, the center of the flame. Skip 8 and see the beauty of the holy name. Numbers turns the mirror, the letters flip and fly. Backwards every 50, return the scriptures cry. 2,000 years awaiting in the double letter high. The long walk back to Zion, the dawning of the day. Deuteronomy, the final word, the highest peak of all the letters. Reversed again, answering the call. 49, the interval, the jubilee is near. The counting of the letters wipes away the fear. 20 highs, 31 reshes, watch the pattern run. 19 vavs, and now the tav, the work is done. Look to the horizon, to the 19th day of fall. 23, the one, the shofar sounds for one and all. The Feast of Tabernacles, a wedding in the light. October 1st to 8th, ending the long night. Just as Jacob at 84 took his double bride. 84 years for Israel, Jesus' wedding is coming. October 8th, the date is set, the promise held so true. The groom is coming for the world, coming home for you. Do you want a portion? Do you want the sign? Build a Torah code, let your spirit align. Say, I will go like Rebecca in the dust. Alech, 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 in the Father we trust. 23rd for all eternity.